So here we're going to be sculpting the brick foundations, and to start I'm just going to kind of rough out the base. So I take the clay tubes brush, give it a color spray and a square alpha, and I just kind of go around and give it some noise and texture. And I also take the trim smooth border and kind of rough out those edges as well. So I'm using the clay tubes, and I'm adding and subtracting to give it kind of like an undulated look to it. We're going to do some sort of like messy grout. Take the clip curve tool and kind of shape out the sides. And I'm going to be doing some sort of like, messy brick wall. And I'm only really going to sculpt one brick, but I'm going to sculpt mostly all sides, and I'm going to flip it around and scale it just because it saves time. So I take my trim smooth border brush and really just like chip away at the edges, giving it the shape that I want. And with bricks, I really like use my reference. So if you're not sure what shape to make, just look at your reference, pick a rock, and try and mimic that shape. And here I take the planar rectangle brush and just drag it all on out and giving it some flat plane edges, or flat plane surfaces. And I have my own rock brushes, as I mentioned before, and if you don't have any, well, there's Google. And it's kind of the same process as I did with the wood, is I just drag out the alpha or the brush, and I kind of chip away at that alpha. And with rocks, I really use And with rocks, I really use the planer rectangle brush. And I drag out a lot of flat planes over my rock alpha because it gives me a good amount of flat rest and then noise cavities. And here I take the clay tubes brush, same brush I used on the grout earlier, and I kind of give the rock an eroded look to it. Mostly I add that stuff on the sides because that's kind of where erosion happens from water or moisture or whatever. And I take the trim smooth border and I go back at those edges and make sure that they're not doughy. And I just add that eroded look on the sides, kind of where I feel like it would work best. I try not to add it too much on the surface, mostly just add it on the sides. And here you can go into your noise tab, or I'm sorry, the surface tab, and go into noise, and you can add a noise plugin from the lightbox. And then what I do is I mask by noise. I don't apply it to the mesh because that will inflate it like a balloon, so I just do mask by noise. And when I do mask by noise, I take my standard brush and I just lightly take away where the mask is. And it will sometimes give me some really nice noise for my rocks. Sometimes it doesn't work, which is fine. So it gives me some nice cavities, and then I take a planer and then I flatten the surface there, and so now it really gives me those nice cavities. Make sure that you're zooming out of your mesh, because since this is a brick, we're not going to be looking at it very close up, so looking at it from far away and seeing what reads is the best way to work. Because you can be sculpting all this detail, but then not even see it later when you realize that we're not really that close up. So again, a lot of this is rinse and repeat. Take the trim smooth border, chip up the edges, get a shape that you want, a silhouette, drag out rock alpha or some rock detail from a rock brush that you found or have. Take the planer brush and kind of flatten some of the surface to get some nice planar surfaces, because the light usually will catch those really nicely, and then you can really see the crevices. You also want to make sure that your rocks are sharp. And so a lot of the time, if you're working on a rock, it tends to get doughy if you're chipping up the sides too much. So that's where I will take the trim smooth border or the planer brush and add to the sides, add to the edges to make sure that those edges are actually sharp. So now I'm going to take the bricks, or the one brick, and duplicate it, rotate it, scale it all around, get the pattern that I want for brick foundation. And we're going to kind of do what we did with the wood planks earlier, is we're gonna rework the rock to make it look as if it's individual from the others. Because we already sculpted a bunch of information in that one brick, so we can just continue to reuse it and just change it up a little bit. Some of these rocks will be kind of like half buried into the grout. Kind of gives it a nice rustic look, as if it was kind of messy. Also making sure all the bricks are tilted ever so slightly so that they're not on a straight angle. Now we're going to go back into the grout and just take that move brush and move things, and then take the standard brush and pull out some of the grout in between the rocks so it looks as if the grout has been pushed out. And then taking the clay tubes brush with the color spray and square alpha and pulling out the grout to make it look really messy and as if it's like spilling over the bricks. And I'm staying pretty zoomed out because we won't be getting that much closer to the brick foundation, so we don't want to spend too much time in detail if you're not even going to see it. Now I'm going really small with the clay tubes brush and giving it more of like a sandy detail. And I continue to change my matte caps to see how things are reading. Changing your matte caps consistently is really going to help because there's different lighting for each of them. A lot of the time I'll just use the clay tubes brush for grout, and only really that brush. So I will switch between the clay tubes, smooth it out, trim smooth border, flatten some stuff, go back in. Just takes a bit of time and reworking areas. Depending on what kind of grout you're sculpting, this can work a lot of ways for you. Now I'm going back into each brick, making sure things look a little different.
This is for you.
Taking the planer rectangle brush and just dragging it out, giving it some nice flat faces. And going back with my trim smooth border and chipping away. Now just dragging out more surface detail with my rock brushes.
This is for you.
And now I'm just going to delete the other side, the blockout side, and just mirror the brick foundation that we just made over. And we won't really change these up. It's gonna be kind of hard to tell that they're mirrored since it's kind of like a noisy mesh. And that's kind of how I sculpt my bricks and the grout for the bricks. Again, a lot of it is just rinse and repeat with maybe 2 or 3 brushes and just working the shapes out the way you want them.